So, if you think of companies from the United States, you probably also think right away of global bestsellers. Whether it's McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Google, Apple, Harley-Davidson, whatever. There are so many things that shape our everyday lives that come from the United States. However, there is one thing the US has always struggled with abroad, and that's its supermarket chains. Not that long ago, I already told you the story of Walmart here on my YouTube channel. The US company is one of the most successful in the world, and yet in the mid-2000s, the supermarket giant failed quite badly with its expansion into Europe. After a short stay in Germany that didn't even last 10 years, the company pulled out again and was never seen there afterward. Back then, Walmart completely overestimated the German market and its own American way of doing things. The interesting part is, Walmart's story isn't the only one. In 2015, one of Walmart's biggest rivals also failed abroad, to be precise, right here in Canada. I'm talking about the famous US supermarket brand Target. The chain runs a hefty 1,900 stores in the United States, and with annual revenues of $107.4 billion, it sits just behind Walmart and ahead of competitors like Costco or Kroger. It also has a thriving online business, and in 2013, the big moment was supposed to come. After operating only in the United States for decades, the company planned its very first expansion into neighboring Canada. A plan that worked not even for 2 years. In 2015, the chain pulled the plug and ended all of its international activities. A pause that lasts to this day. One thing I can already tell you. Target's failure in Canada was a little bit different from Walmart's failure in Germany, but still the case is no less curious. And in this video, I'd like to tell you all about it. This is how Target failed in Canada. To understand why Target couldn't gain a foothold here in Canada, we first need to understand what kind of company Target actually is. As I already mentioned, unlike other US companies, Target for many years didn't really dare to enter a foreign market. However, in the United States itself, it is pretty successful. In 1902, businessman George Dayton opened his first department store in downtown Minneapolis, still under the name Dayton Dry Goods Company. In 1911, the name was changed into the Dayton Company. For several years, things went quite well. In 1962, the company took a new, forward-looking step. The Dayton Company opened its first discount store under the name, Target in Roseville, Minnesota. In the same year, 3 more stores followed in Crystal, Duluth, and St. Louis Park. That was the beginning of Target's development as an independent brand. In 1969, the company merged with the J.L. Hudson Company. In 1978, it took over Mervyn's, and in 1990, it bought Marshall Field's. The discount division, Target, however, became the main driver of growth. In the 2000s, 75% of revenue came from Target stores. Marshall Field's and Mervyn's were sold again in 2004. After that, Target continued to focus on brands like Target itself, Target Greatland, and Super Target. Well, and in the mid-2000s, the first rumors started about the company's expansion abroad, to be precise, to Canada. One reason was that Target was always quite popular with Canadians. They just drove across the border to shop there. And there were also some developments on the Canadian market itself. In 2010, the company HBC planned to sell its Zellers stores in Canada, and one of the interested parties was Walmart, Target's competitor. Richard Baker, the CEO of HBC, recognized the value of the real estate and wanted the best possible price. So he told Target that Zellers was up for sale and that Walmart was also interested. Target reacted quickly, maybe a little too quickly as it would later turn out, and made its move. The company ended up taking over the leases for up to 220 Zellers stores for about 1.83 billion Canadian dollars. The purchase price surprised many because of how high it was. But that was not the only part of the deal. The Target Corporation also committed to opening the stores as soon as possible, for example, to avoid unnecessary rental costs. Shortly after the contracts were signed, employees from Minneapolis were sent to Canada to help prepare the market launch. And in 2011, the first 105 locations were announced. The plan was a multi-stage opening cycle starting in spring 2013. Each location had to close for up to 9 months for renovations. The company's ambitious goal was to have around 135 Target stores in Canada with about 27,000 employees. In 2013, it finally happened. The first 3 stores were opened in Ontario, and the expansion continued steadily until 2014. The stores followed the same basic concept as in the United States. All of them used the familiar shade of red, and the product range was meant to be similar as well. Most locations were also equipped with an integrated Starbucks. There was a strategy behind that. In the US, Target aims for a more upscale image, while Walmart focuses more on the mass market. Walmart stores usually include fast food chains like McDonald's or Subway. Well, and this could be the end of our story, but as you already know, it's not, because despite all these efforts, Target did not really work here in Canada. And now let's get to the question, why? And if you do some research on this topic, you will find all kinds of opinions by experts, but there are certain points that you will read in all of these analyses. One issue that came up again and again was the high prices. Tony Fisher, the president of Target Canada, warned early on that customers in Canada couldn't expect the same prices as south of the border. Transportation, distribution, and fuel costs were too different, plus higher wages, different taxes, varying product costs, and tariffs. Another problem, the American distribution network couldn't be used in Canada due to different import rules, tariffs, and safety regulations. The result was that Canadian stores couldn't place orders on their own. From the start, this led to some odd situations. For example, in Windsor, near Detroit, customers found jerseys of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Blue Jays instead of merchandise for the popular Detroit Red Wings and Tigers. The consequence, people near the border who knew the US Target stayed away from the Canadian stores because their expectations simply weren't met. On top of that, many Canadians complained that the bargains they used to find in the old Zellers stores were suddenly gone. Another explanation that you read quite often is about the shopping habits of Canadians, which are obviously a bit different from the American ones. Just like Walmart, Target relied on the one-stop shop experience, but that was obviously not what the Canadians wanted. In Canada, it seems more common for people to shop at different stores depending on the product and current offers. They buy groceries at a supermarket, other items at a drugstore, and clothing at a specialty shop. At Target, the hope was probably to make that extra trip unnecessary with a wide range of products. In reality, however, this approach meant that expectations for good value had to be met across all categories at once, a challenge that Target Canada couldn't meet, neither in pricing nor in logistics. But the biggest problem for Target in Canada was not the prices or the misunderstanding of the Canadian market. It was, as strange and bizarre it might sound, technical problems. And they already started before the first branches even opened. For its entry into the Canadian market, Target decided to implement a so-called ERP system. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning and is a software that links and manages all key business processes at a company in one place, from logistics and inventory management to accounting, human resources, and customer service. The goal was clear: the structures from the United States were to be transferred directly to the Canadian market. The timeline was extremely ambitious. At the same time as the aggressive expansion plan to open over 100 stores in a very short period, the ERP software had to be completed and adapted to Canadian conditions. But this turned out to be more complicated than expected, because, as you might know, Canada has not only different customs rules and different languages, it also has different units of measurement, a problem that obviously hadn't been fully considered. The result, Target's supply chain software, according to media reports, it came from the German company SAP, was full of errors from the very start. Numerous problems appeared early on, and it took months to fix them. Measurements were listed in inches instead of centimeters, or entered in the wrong order. Wrong currencies were used, product descriptions were inaccurate, and important information was missing. One reason was clearly the time pressure, because, as mentioned, the company wanted to hit the market fast. Employees had to enter around 75,000 products into SAP and apparently worked very imprecisely. The result, products with long shipping times from overseas were delayed, didn't fit into shipping containers, or had incomplete or missing custom codes. Goods that reached the distribution center often couldn't be prepared for delivery to the stores. Some items didn't even fit into the shelves. What at first seems like isolated problems quickly turned into a major issue that threatened the entire supply chain. Even before the stores opened, Target employees were completely exhausted because of these problems. Many worked late past midnight, staring at their screens in fatigue. The company eventually brought in ice cream and pizza to keep them motivated. These problems had immediate effects on the branches. Target in Canada actually first saw quite high visitor numbers, but very soon customers complained about one thing above all: empty shelves. From the very beginning, Target Canada struggled with massive supply chain problems. Still, the US parent company didn't want to delay the planned launch. It would have been too expensive to keep paying rent for stores that were already leased but not yet open. When the problems became visible to customers, the company explained that it had been overwhelmed by high demand and was working on improving product deliveries, but the issues with data quality continued to disrupt the supply chain. Well, but even if you did manage to find something at Target Canada, despite the empty shelves, the next frustration often came at the checkout. The checkout system also caused serious problems. The self-checkout machines sometimes gave the wrong change, the terminals took unusually long to start up, and occasionally froze completely. Some items couldn't be scanned, prices were displayed incorrectly, or a transaction appeared to be completed even though the payment was never processed. The system came from an Israeli company called Retalix, which worked closely with Target Canada to fix these errors. Progress, however, was extremely slow. Target had no choice but to stick with this solution. There wasn't enough time to find a new provider and implement different technology. The result? Extremely long lines at the registers. There are even reports of customers leaving the store and abandoning their purchases without paying. In February 2014, the inevitable happened. The company released its annual figures, and they looked, to put it bluntly, horrible. Specifically, Target Canada reported a loss of $941 million. The company attributed the losses to difficulties with growth, expansion costs, and significant discounts caused by overstocked inventory. But the outlook was still optimistic. We want to make sure we have the right quantity of each item in the right place at the right time, CEO Greg Steinhafel said when announcing the results. That, however, was his last report as CEO. Just a few months later, in May 2014, he stepped down, not solely because of the Canadian failure, but also due to a major data breach at Target USA, though that is another story entirely. In June 2014, Target tried transparency. The company posted an apology on YouTube. In the video, employees and executives spoke openly about the struggles of the first year and admitted mistakes. "We are now on the right track," one employee emphasizes. Definitely. Over the course of 2014, the company gradually got a better handle on its technology, data, and supply chain processes. For 2015, there were even big plans, including launching online shopping through Target.ca. But the hope didn't last long. On January 15, 2015, Target Canada finally filed for bankruptcy. By then, the company had invested $7 billion in the expansion and didn't expect profits before 2021. After total losses of $2.5 billion, the Minneapolis-based company closed all 133 stores in Canada and laid off 17,600 employees. Many articles ultimately blame the company's rushed entry into the Canadian market for its failure. Numerous pitfalls were apparently overlooked. Neither the specific conditions of the neighboring market nor technical challenges were fully considered. Analysts argue that a carefully planned market entry with clear focus on local conditions would likely have been far more promising. The interesting thing is, this failed expansion was Target's first and last attempt to enter a market abroad. Unlike competitors like Walmart, for example, the company today is only active in the United States of America, and there is actually no sign at all that this will change in the future. In the 10 years since withdrawing from Canada, Target has focused on strengthening its business in the United States. The company invested heavily in online retail, same-day delivery services, and private label products, positioning itself as a leading player in a changing retail landscape. The Canadian market has also changed a lot during this time. The boom in e-commerce, new shopping habits, and the growth of discount retailers have reshaped the industry. Whether Target will ever return to Canada remains a matter of speculation. The company itself, however, shows no sign of wanting to re-enter the market. Experts agree that any future attempt would have to look completely different, with a more cautious expansion plan, locally adapted pricing, and a far more stable supply chain. Meanwhile, industry watchers speculate that following recent investments, Target could instead set its sights on the Mexican market. If that actually happens, at least the planners now know what can go wrong when expanding abroad. So, that's it. That was my story about the failed expansion of Target in Canada. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. And if you did, then please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can do that on Patreon, or you can become a channel member on my YouTube channel. Then you will get exclusive stuff and new videos before everyone else. So you should check that out. That's it for today. Have a safe journey and see you next time.